This is Arubisht. A warm welcome once again to Hyderabad Runners weekly webinar series Beyond the Track. We hope you are taking all measures to stay safe and healthy. Hyderabad Runners promotes running, fitness, and active lifestyles through its thousands of volunteers, mentors, and ambassadors. I have personally been associated with Hyderabad Runners for almost 6 years and achieved most of my running milestones in the runs organized by them. I have been a regular participant in Club Run and in the signature Airtel Hyderabad Marathon (AHM). A few of our other initiatives are Couch to 5K, Outdoor Kids, and Train and Shine. In our endeavor to keep you constantly aware and educated, we bring you Beyond the Track, a 1 hour live webinar series of conversations with some of the highly distinguished experts from running and the sports field to help you all equip with both theoretical knowledge and practical training. In this 36th episode of Beyond the Track, we are honored to connect you to Mr. Kyron D'Souza, a passionate mountaineer, Indian ultra runner, and endurance athlete. He is the only Indian athlete to finish Spartathlon, a 246-kilometer foot race from Athens to Sparta in 33 hours straight. As we endeavor to create a smooth learning experience for you all, continue to post your questions to Kyron in the comment section. Mr. Samuel Sudhakar is an active member of Hyderabad Runners and will be interacting with our guest and facilitating today's session. Without further ado, I'd like to invite him to introduce and welcome our speaker for today. Over to you, Sam Uncle.
Thank you, Aru. Thank you, Aru. Hello, everyone. Last webinar of the year 2020. What a year this has been. A year which most of us would like to forget as a bad dream. While not being able to connect on ground, we at Hyderabad Runners kept the running community engaged with our weekly webinar series. In the past, we have had coaches, runners, doctors, and many other from the running and sporting community. And we've had some interesting conversations with them. Today, we have a name that is very synonymous with ultra running in India. Kyron D'Souza, an ultra marathoner, the man who likes to get past his limitations, both physical and also finds it exciting. The man who chose to move away from the clutter of city life and to the mountains to pursue his passion for ultra running. He happens to be the most recognizable face of India's ultra running scene. At the age of 21, he completed the La Ultra 111 kilometers at Ladakh, running at an altitude of 10,000 feet. At the age of 22, he won the Bhatti Lakes 160 kilometers ultra marathon held at Faridabad. And at the age of 23, he became the first and only Indian ever to qualify and finish the Spartathlon, a 246-kilometer foot race from Athens to Sparta. He stood 85th among the 370 finishers and he ran for 33 hours. Till date, only 29 athletes under the age of 25 have finished this race in its 37-year history. At the age of 25, he completed the Hong Kong Ultra Trail 100 kilometers. He was placed 78th among the 1,576 finishers. At the age of 26, he represented India at the World Trail Championships. And this year, he ran up the 5,300-meter Friendship Peak in Kulu Valley in 11 hours and 35 minutes. This perhaps is the fastest known time to scale this peak. So what does it take to be one of India's best and leading long distance trail runners? Let's hear it from the man himself. Over to you, Kyron.
Thank you so much, Samuel, for this introduction, and to Aru as well, and also to the community of Hyderabad runners for inviting me over for, like you mentioned, the 36th webinar of the year. So I'm pretty excited to be here and share my journey with everyone who will be watching. So I have a PPT to share with you all and take you through my journey over the last 10 years of running in different places and many different landscapes. So even though Samuel here has, listed out a couple of races, and I would still, take you through that whole journey and share a few stories for all of you. So yeah, so I've been running since 2010. So that makes it a little over 10 years now for me. And I started with, a short distance, a 10K, a 12K in college. And at that time, that was the longest I'd ever run. And it was not the most pleasant experience for me. I remember, finishing the 12K and wanting to give up. And uh, I told myself after I crossed the finish line, never again. I'm not going to be doing this uh, running stuff. I was happy with just playing my football and basketball. Uh, Clearly, that was not how it would, continue. I started running a lot after that. I think the more I ran, the more I learned about myself, the more I unlocked various gears, so to say, and and kept running more and more. So over the years, I went from a 10K uh, to um, a half marathon a year later, and to onto my first ultra um, later on. So yeah, so I as I started running, I started learning more about myself and what kind of running I was enjoying. Um, the first 5 years of my running career, so to say, has been focused more on races, and the second half in the since 2015 has been focused more on trail races. And I'll tell you why further down in the webinar. So trail running that this slide is about is essentially running off the roads. There is no specific distance in trail running. You can run a 5K, a 10K, 100, 200, whatever pleases you. It basically just means running off the tarmac, off the cemented paths. It could be jeep trails, it could be deserts, forests, or some of the extreme kind of trails that I'm running on. This picture here is of on a trail in between Manali and Ladakh a few years back. So before I get out, sorry, 1 second. Yeah. So over the last 5 years, if you read about me or if you just look me up, you will see that I've been running more and more races globally outside India. One of the big reasons is because I am focused on trying to be the best athlete out there, and I chase um, the biggest races, and I want to do races which are very competitive. So the reason of I choose to focus on running globally is because I want to run with the best of the people that are there in the world. So this picture on the left here it's for anyone who follows ultra running can see it's UTMB. It's one of the most iconic races in the world. And the image on the left, it's actually a video. It's actually from the start line of UTMB. And that was also the first ever trail race that I ran. I ran the CCC, which is the 100-kilometer version of the UTMB. One of the big parts of racing and traveling globally is also the community. I get to interact with a lot of different people and a lot of people from different backgrounds. It allows me to grow as an athlete and to grow as a person and make a lot of friends and learn a lot about the world. And that is, for me, a very important part of running as well, to meet people, to learn about people. Yeah. So this slide's on Spartathlon. This is a race I did in 2015. Now, this, for any of you who don't know, is one of the most iconic races in the ultra running world, and also, if I'm not mistaken, probably one of the last road ultras that I've run. This was back in 2016, and I was the first Indian to have participated in the Spartathlon and finished it as well. I was 23, I think, at that time. And it was an amazing experience running 246 kilometers. I had never run over 100 miles. The longest distance before that was the Bhati Ultra, where I had just, I'd used that as a qualification for Spartathlon. So I had run 84 kilometers longer than my longest distance ever. And I I can still remember the whole race very clearly. And I remember traveling with my mom and being at the start line, being very nervous, meeting all these people who had been running the race for so many years. There were guys who had been running this race for over 10 years. There were people who had been running it like me for the first time, and everyone very excited, very friendly, very supportive. I remember a lot of people I met during Spartathlon are friends that I keep in touch with even now. And actually, one of my friends, Tobias, he's also come and supported me and some of us at the trail and at the World Championships. So yeah, this race starts in Greece, in Athens, in Greece, at the Colosseum, if I'm not mistaken, and it goes all the way across the country into this town called Sparta, and that's where the image on the left is. That's at the finish line. It's at the statue of King Leonidas. Uh, I remember running pretty smoothly for the first 160 kilometers, for the first 200 kilometers, sorry. No hiccups as such, small niggles here and there, as you can expect when you've been running for 20, 25 hours. But the real challenge, the real story, for Spartathlon sort of begins at 205 kilometers approximately when I hurt my legs. Both my ankles were a little banged up, and one ankle was swollen out and popping out of my shoe, and the other ankle I had tendonitis on it. So I started moving extremely slow after that and barely running. That last 42 kilometers is probably the slowest marathon I've ever done. It took me, I think, 7.5 to 8 hours. I think I was at around 24, 25 hours, around 205K, very excited that I'm going to be finishing in a good time. And that's when both my ankles gave up, and I started pretty much dragging myself across the rest of this course to finish. Luckily, I finished because most people don't finish in their first time. The most folks have a DNF, especially in their first attempt at this race. So I was definitely quite fortunate to be able to pull it off and execute this race and end up being the first guy from India to do this. And I was extremely glad. Like you can see, my mom was there at the finish line, and I was able to share this with her. I think that was the first time or the second time she's probably seen me run. So it's quite a nice experience. Over the years, I have always, dreamt of wanting to represent my country at the highest stage in the sport. I think, like any athlete, as any sportsman would, we would all want to, right, have this opportunity. And this opportunity sort of came knocking at my door in 2017. Well, I wouldn't say knocking at my door. I worked for it. We reached out, my dad and me. We reached out to the the IAU, which is the ultra running governing body, and the AFI, and worked behind the scenes to actually make this happen. And this image here is of me and my good friend Ullas running at the Trail World Championships in, if I'm not mistaken, June 2017. This was the first time India had ever been at the World Championships, and again, a very nice experience that I still remember very clearly. And I remember just being there, both Ullas and me sharing a room, and meeting all these people at so the same place. So what happens in the World Championships is you get to stay in the same location. So you end up meeting everyone from every country, and you're spending 3-4 days before the race, interacting with people, and once again, ended up meeting wonderful people that became friends and are still friends. And this photo here was actually clicked by a friend of mine, and he's come over to India as well to just come and run around in the mountains over here with me. So that's essentially a big part of why I like to run and why I like to travel and be in so many different races all over the world to meet people. This again was a tough race, I would say, because there was a lot of pressure. First time putting on the jersey with India written on it, you do feel uh, the weight of a lot of people, I guess, and also because I'd worked for this, right? We had worked to make this happen for many months. So I think I got a little carried away in the race, and eventually struggled with it a little bit, but pulled it off and did finish fairly all right. And over the years, 2018, 2019, I've had the opportunity to race at the World Championships as well, and it's been really nice to see that the team's growing. In this image here is just two of us. In the following years, we had 4, 5, 6 people as well. So it just shows that there's a lot of talent and a lot of people in the country that uh, are equally passionate about the sport and equally excited to be able to have the opportunity to represent their country in the sport. Uh, for me, I have been doing this full time since 2015, and I naturally put in a lot of work into training because I focus on performance is key for me, and that's what in this image here. That's what I'm doing. I'm training in Chamonix. I had gone to this place in France. It's, you could say, it's pretty much the center, the hub for mountain sports in the world. If you read back about mountaineering history or pretty much any outdoor sports in the mountains, it happens here. Whether it's climbing, mountaineering, trail running, UTMB happens here. So this is the place where everyone comes down. I was able to spend 3 months here with a friend, Hayden Hawks, who's one of the top trail runners in the world, and train with him and learn from him and just improve as an athlete. Eventually, when you want to compete with the best in the world, you need to put in that effort, and you need to make decisions that will allow you to improve and compete with people at the highest standards. So I'd spent 3 months here racing and training. I'd run a few races during this time. There's a race called Marathon du Mont Blanc, which runs in this valley in Chamonix, and I was I think I placed 21st in that race, and I had quite a good day. This particular trail that I'm running on here is actually part of that race route, but you're running in the opposite direction usually. And I I remember executing the race well. With time, this was, I think, 2017 or 18, and with time, I've been able to get better with the way I execute my races. It's planning, it's training. I train for everything, whether it's my nutrition, whether it is my the shoes, the pants, the shirt, the cap. I use all my equipment. I train with all of it, and eventually that allows me to execute a good race. Not all races go well, and you even after all the planning and all the training, things still go wrong. And I've had a couple of tough races, I would say. La Ultra was one. There's a race called Ultra Trail Cape Town, which is another race which I actually DNF at. And these races, while I don't like to DNF, I think a DNF is, and failing at something is good, because it allows you to learn and allows you to improve and allows you to grow. So the two DNFs that I've had at La Ultra in 2014 and at Ultra Trail Cape Town in 2018 have been good, learning experiences. I've understood why I've DNF'd and what were the reasons behind it, and I've made sure those are not the same reasons I face in other races. This is my first ever trail race. It again in Chamonix. I've clearly spent a lot of time there. It's in Chamonix where it's CCC. It's part of the UTMB, and um, I ran this in 2015. It was the first time I'd ever gone abroad. The first time I'd ever actually run a trail race. Before this, I'd been on trails for training in the months leading up to this, but I'd never been a part of a trail race. And this was a huge learning curve. Even though I finished this race, I think second in my age category at that time. I think I was 22 or 21. Uh, Even though I was second in my age category, I think it was a huge learning experience for me. I remember people telling me that don't run down the mountain too hard, don't go too fast. And I can remember very clearly going up this huge climb. It's a climb that you go up this mountain and you're going up for like 1.5 hours non-stop. And after that, there's this long descent down into the valley. And I was running down the descent, and I remember people, telling me, Karan, don't go down too hard, take it easy. But I kept going very hard, and I was like, these people, what? I can't understand what they're telling me. This is so much fun. This is so easy. But that was only 20K into the race. 60 kilometers into the race, I was in a very different condition. Over here, I was looking at the camera here, but I was actually in a lot of pain. It's on this particular image is on a descent while going downhill, and my legs were hurting, and I'm glad I was able to pull it off, even though I was in all that pain. But a huge learning curve, whether it was from race execution perspective or from training perspective. And it's around this time when I also, decided to leave everything and focus on shifting to Manali and training full time. So that's a little bit about running around in different parts of the world. But a lot of my journey pretty much started in India and running in India itself, right? So before I take you to shifting into Manali, I'll tell you a little bit about the races I ran in India. This is all before 2015. This image here is in Manali, but we'll get to that a little later. So La Ultra. This is definitely, I think, one of my favorite races in India. For one big reason is because of the fact that this also was the first time I had not finished a race. 2014, I had just finished college, gone to Ladakh. My parents had come down, and a very tough race. I mean, back then, I don't think there was any Indian who had taken part in this race, or probably there was someone and they had not finished in 2014, I think, and or 13. My years are a little mixed up. But a lot of pressure. I think I put all the pressure on myself. I was like, I wanted to do this race. I wanted to, I'd read about all this race for many years. It was definitely, the gold standard of racing in India, and one of the toughest races you could ever do. So this was high up on my list of racing. I got to the start line, this young guy who had been racing fairly all right. I wouldn't say great, fairly all right for a few years before that. I had been winning a few races that I had done, Nilgiris 100, Bangalore Ultra. I'd been doing fairly all right, and I got to the start of La Ultra, and my ego was on an all-time high, and I was like, yeah, I got this, I'm just going to blaze through this whole course and do very well. And that's not how it turned out. I ended up dropping out at 49 kilometers, and that's the first checkpoint. I got to, I think it's called North Pulu, and I got there a couple of minutes late, I think 3-4 minutes late from the cutoff. And well, as the rules are, that once you miss the cutoff, you don't get to continue. So that's what happened, and it taught me a lot. I was very disappointed in myself. It's not the cheapest race to do. It's an expensive race. Entry wise, you got to go all the way to Ladakh, commit time in Ladakh. You got to stay there, train in the months leading up. So definitely, it's not the most expensive race to do. And I was definitely quite, involved in the whole race. So quite disappointed that I had not finished. I was very sad. I think I did cry a bit, but I took a step back after this race and tried to be brutally honest with myself about why I did not finish this. And that allowed me to learn stuff about myself. and make sure I do not repeat those mistakes. What I learned about myself from this race was, because of me doing fairly all right in the races, I had my ego on an all-time high, and I was overconfident about myself, and I essentially not prepared too well. And because of that, I did not finish this race. I was not fit fit as I should have been. I was not as prepared as I should have been. So after that race, I remember telling myself that, Kyron, you're now going to the start line of another race without putting in that preparation. And this allowed me to be clear about how I wanted to take my running career forward. Since then, if you see, I have not really done too many races over the years. I limit it to like 2 or 3 events in a year. Those 2 or 3, focused A races in a year, and the rest are usually a few supporting races to get me fit for my A goals. This is Malnad Ultra, and this was in 18 and 2018. I ran the 50K. This is one of the most popular races. I think a lot of you have know about it and probably have run it as well. And it's an amazing race to get started with trail running. And I've been there twice. Once I was there just after Spartathlon, and the second time as a runner. And for anyone out there, watching this, and if you're thinking about trying your feet at running on trails, well, you should try Malnad Ultra for sure. It's a great race to, get you out into the forest, onto mud roads and off the tarmac. And I'm pretty sure you'll come out with a pretty good experience. And that's one of the beautiful things about running on the trails. Beautiful views, beautiful sounds, no honking. It's the sounds of your foot, the breeze, the water, the birds chirping. So it's definitely a very nice and pleasant experience running on the trails. It allows you to forget about all those hard climbs. This is a race called Deccan Ultra in Maharashtra, just outside Pune. And like you can see, compared to the previous picture, the terrain here is very different, a lot more dry, a lot more rocky. And I think this kind of terrain sort of suits me better. I like technical courses. I like, gnarly courses where there's rocks and you can slip and slide and a little scary at times. And that's what I enjoy the most. Like, I think smooth courses are, for me, I find them a little boring. I like a little more extreme, a little more rugged and scary. And you'll see further down in the next few slides, some of the stuff I do is even more technical than this. So this is a nice race in Maharashtra, right? All right. Oh yeah. The next slide. Oh, okay. So actually, before I go on to the next one, I missed out on this part of the story. So on this one, so La Ultra, I DNF'd in 2014, but 2 years later, I came back to this race to run it once again, and the second time I ended up winning it. The second time, I actually used this as a training run for Spartathlon. It was okay. So Spartathlon was a scary build-up for me, right? Running 246 kilometers is not easy. So I was very scared going into the race, and I wanted to do something that would allow me to get past that fear. And La Ultra was perfect. I had failed at it in the past. It was the perfect, race to go back at, do a good job, and it would also allow me to get over that failure and also allow me to get over the fear I had for Spartathlon. So I went back in the same year as Spartathlon, probably about a month and a half. I ran 1:11 over Kadungla this time. This time around, it was a much better experience. Since it was a training run, I was not trying to go hard. The idea with this race was to run 111 kilometers in really tough conditions over a really tough course, and come out with feeling like I could have done a lot more. That was my idea with the way I'd approached La Ultra the second time. I finished crossing the finish line. I won it in around 15 and a half hours. But winning it and crossing that finish line was not as satisfying as the fact that I knew, deep inside that I could have gone harder. I could have run a lot more, and that allowed me to have that confidence going into Spartathlon, that I could pull it off, and I could the training I'd been doing in the months leading up, I could it did pay off, and I could do a good job at Spartathlon. So La Ultra the second time around was like a boost, a mental booster kind of race for me. Yep. And so this is a race that I have been working on with my friends at Foreplay for the last 2 years. And this particular image is from the first year. Probably you guys have heard about it, maybe you've not, but it's a race to the top of a 6,000 meter mountain. We organized it in 2019, last year, and it didn't go through on the last day. As you can see in this image, it might look really beautiful, but the roads had blocked off. We couldn't. The weather had turned bad, and it had been snowing for 3 days, so we had to pull the plug. And here is the whole team, walking back to the road far down in the valley, so we could wrap up and leave. But this is a race that I have been working on to a bit of an extreme race up to Mount Unam, which is at 6,000 meters, to bring another dimension to the trail running space in India. And 2020 we couldn't execute it as well, but 2021 we are looking forward to executing it, and can't wait to have a lot of people. And I've run in this area. It is beautiful, like you can see, and I can't wait to pull it off next year. All right, so since 2015 I have shifted to Manali, and I have been focusing on trail running and running as a full-time athlete. These are two images from there, and the one on the left is on a winter hike in the forest behind my house up in the mountain, and the one on the right is on the same mountain, actually way higher, at just below 4,000 meters, but this is in the summer. The idea with shifting to Manali was to be able to focus all my energies into becoming the best trail runner out there, and to be able to compete at the highest levels and with the best of the people all over the world. So that's what I've been doing, basically living for the last 5 years, training as a full-time athlete, pursuing races globally, and just trying to improve year on year on year. And that's one reason why you see I have not been doing road races since 2016, since Spartathlon. I realized, many years back, before I got into running, mountaineering is what I was passionate about and interested in. And that, for reasons like financial or time kind of reasons, it did not happen. So with running, I realized that, with trail running, I had realized that I could get back into this interest of mountaineering and being in the mountains and doing things in the mountains. So that's one reason why I ended up choosing to, focus all my energies on trail running. And that's the reason why I've also been able to do a lot of these races over the years. Living in Manali is clearly, like you can see in these images, beautiful. It's a very simple life, nothing like what's in the cities. If I was doing this webinar today from Manali, I think we would have faced too many glitches with power cuts and bad internet, and it probably is snowing there right now. But it's a nice. I enjoy my time there. Going out and running, knowing everyone. It's a small town. I have random dogs that keep coming out and running with me. A lot of people keep coming to Manali as well, so I get to run with people every now and then. I get to show people a lot of the valley when they come. This is another image from one of my training days. This is in spring. I'd gone up to a 4,000 meter peak just behind my house, and like you can see, it's clearly very beautiful. And this is all part of training. The more you move in the mountains, the more you'll get better. So I've been able to, I do a lot of different things in the mountains in Manali. And this year 2020 has, while it's not been a great year for racing, it has been a great year for me because it's allowed me to pursue some of my long goals that I've had since I've been in Manali. And one of those things it's been my dream to mix the sport of trail running and running and mountaineering and merge it into one sport. And while I've just been dreaming about it over the years, this year in 2020, I was finally able to execute it. And crossing things like Hamta Pass is part of that. If you see in this image, it's hard to you'll not notice, but in the mountains somewhere there is basically where Hamta Pass is. And further back in the mountains is where Hamta Pass, goes from Manali, Kullu Valley into Lahore Spiti. And you go from lush green meadows and a lush green forest straight into a barren, arid landscape where it's very dry. And I love that. So Hamta Pass is a very popular trek, and it is a trek that a lot of people do over multiple days. Last year, I finally, ended up attempting to run it. It's not a very long trek. While people take 3 days, I think realistically people can still take 2 days. It's about 25 kilometers in one way, and I had taken around 4.5 hours to do this. And this was sort of my first execution of these random thoughts and random dreams that I just keep, making while I'm sitting and staring at these mountains from my window. Actually pulling off running over a high altitude pass. And after this, this was actually in 2019. This allowed me to, gain that confidence that I can actually execute bigger, better projects. So Friendship Peak, Triple Trouble Run, and Deotiba is what I sort of executed in 2020. These are projects that I've just been, building up in my head. I'm like, it'd be nice to run up these mountains. It'd be nice to actually do this. Because I've been reading about, people doing things of this sort on Aconcagua and in South America, on Denali in US, on Mont Blanc in Chamonix. So people do these kind of things everywhere, but no one's been doing this in India. So in 2020, while from a racing perspective, once again, like it wasn't the best of years for me, because I was able to execute these projects, it was a great year. I have been dreaming about Friendship Peak for almost 5 or 6 years. It's taken me all these years to finally, make an attempt and successfully make an attempt. So I started the year in June. As soon as we had, I think, Unlock 1 or Unlock 2, 2.0, I reached out to the administration and made an attempt on this peak. This was the first speed ascent that I did. This particular image is just, I think, about 200-300 meters short of the summit. And at the right bottom, if you see, it's a little blurred out, but it's the Manali, the town of Manali, far away there. And after this, I executed another run, less mountaineering, more run. It was over Hamta Pass and Rohtang Pass, and two very popular passes. I ran about 126 kilometers in about 19 hours. And that was again something, I'd just been sitting in my room, staring out of the windows and thinking it would be pretty cool to be able to run this route. 2020 again, the time not put into racing and training for racing allowed me to pull that off. And I ended the year with my last major goal for the year at Mount Deotibba, which is a 6,000 meter peak. And that was done on the 1st of October. And that goes from 3,000 meters all the way to 6,000 meters and back. So the times and the routes I did on these mountains were not one way. I went up and came down. So I'll play the next slide. It is a video. I'll mute it and it'll let that play in the background, but I'll also take you through my speed ascent on Mount Friendship. If I end up speaking about all three projects, I think this will just keep going on and on. So I'll keep this limited to just Mount Friendship. All right. All right. So I did this, like you can see, on 16 June, and I started in town in Manali on Mall Road. Mall Road, why? Because you can actually see the summit from Mall Road. I took most people actually go all about 20-25 kilometers further up the valley where the trail starts from. And like you can see, a lot of it is running on the road. So I started, I think, at 1 in the morning. I ran from Manali, ran into Solang, and further up about 7 kilometers up where the now famous Rohtang Tunnel, Atal Tunnel is. Just before that, I took the trail which goes up the valley to where the glacier and Bias Kund Glacier is. That's where the river Bias starts from. So I took the trail in the middle of the night up there. Then I crossed the trail, like you can see over here, streams, jumped over them, and I was all on my own in this section. I had a team helping me out till the road, and then I had a team further up on the mountain. So like you can see here, this is at the base camp that we had set, and this is my friend Sukrit. He was coordinating with us down at the base of the mountain, and also helping me with some water and drinks along the way. I had a filming crew spread across the mountain. They had gone 3 days in advance. Stationed themselves on different parts of the mountain, which is why we have all these shots and we've been able to document this. I had left some of my gear on the mountain when I'd gone a couple of days before. So I have a bag over here, which you see had my mountaineering gear. This here is at around 4,300 meters, early morning, around 5:30. Very cold. I was there, like you see in the previous shot. In my shots, mistake, and I should have been, decked up and in warm clothes. Anyways, my friends helped me wear my gear. I went up, kept going up the mountain. Usually, this is all done with ropes, with a lot more safety for people. But since it was a speed attempt, I was doing this on my own. I had no room for, carrying more gear and I had to be as light as possible. So I went without any kind of gear for safety. But safety was there. I had the confidence in my skills, which allowed me to, have and make decisions and be able to execute this and have the confidence that I could actually pull this off. So I got here, like you can see, 7 hours and 16 minutes from Mall Road. I'd done a little Instagram live. I had not spoken about doing this at all. I just, went out after some planning and executed this. So I did a little Instagram live from the summit over here, and then turned around and went all the way back to Manali, which overall took me about 11 hours and 45 minutes. Going down was pretty steep. I had to, we don't have a shot of it, but I had to walk backwards because it was a bit too steep going down. I could not go down, just walk down. Yeah, so I came down. at one point, like you would have seen in the previous shot, I had where I was wearing my gear. I removed all my mountaineering gear there, changed into my running gear, and started running down the mountain. This here is where the base camp is. I stopped over here, changed my pants, had some soup, removed the basic other gear that I had, like my micro spikes and stuff. And I still had a long way to go. It's 31 kilometers. I still had a good 23, 24 kilometers more to go. So after this, I kept running back the same way, pretty much, the trail down to the roadhead at Dhundi. This here is the bridge that eventually goes to Atal Tunnel, and I kept running all the way back to Manali through Solang, the same way back. So the back over there, the mountain, the shot is the top of it is basically Mount Friendship. The reason for doing Mount Friendship was one, it is a peak that can be seen from Mall Road. So if you guys ever go to Manali and you look up the valley, you can see that peak. And just keep in mind that, this guy, Kyron, he went up that. And it was a peak that I had also first attempted when I was doing my basic mountaineering course some 10, 11 years back. So I was wanting to, it was an incomplete, unsuccessful attempt at that time. So it was a peak that I was wanting to go back and do. And this was pretty much the first time anything of this sort had happened in India. It's easy to dream, it's easy to make up grand ideas and just think anything, but finally executing this project allowed me to actually validate my thoughts and validate my whatever I had been dreaming of. And that led to eventually Teotibba, and that eventually has also led to me dreaming about mountains and projects for the coming year in 2020. So this pretty much also brings my little presentation to an end. For 2021, what I see myself doing is definitely, I hope to run a few races, but I also hope to be able to pull off some more mountaineering projects. And the idea with, doing mountains and having these projects in India is to show people all over the world that we have an amazing landscape in India and we have a lot to do within India, and also to show a lot of people within India that these things can be done in the mountains in India. It's possible. We can, dream about these things in our for ourselves to execute in our own country. We don't need to just think about going or anywhere in the world and making these attempts. We can make amazing attempts on the mountains or in the outdoors in our country as well. So I do hope to see, more people making attempts, and in of course, a safe way. But I definitely hope to see more people trying this and hopefully, allow the sport or this outdoor space to grow as well. So, yep, that's it. And that's about my time as well. So thank you so much for patiently listening to me.
Thanks, Kyron. That was fantastic. It was like watching that Vertical Limit movie. And I don't think we were wrong in calling this webinar as insane running. I have a couple of things to ask you. For most of us, the amateur runners or the weekend runners or the whatever one would like to call us, there's a typical progression from 10 to 21, 21 to 42, and then 21, 42. We try to alternate, trying to get our personal best times. But I think you just jumped from 21 fivefold to 100 kilometers. Why don't you tell us something about that?
That's basically because I was a little kid, over smart kid. So what happened was I did a 10K and then I did a 21K. Now at that time, this was 2011, 2012. I didn't know better. I did not know people in the running space. I didn't have a smartphone to Google things about running at that time. So in my head, the jump from 10 to 21 was very easy. I felt running a 21K was not the hardest thing to do. So when I was wanting to, test myself and push myself more, I thought to myself that jumping from a 21 to 42 would also be too easy. It's just doubling it, right? 10 to 20 is double, so 21 to 42 is a double. So I was like, you know what? No, you look for something harder. So I jumped straight to 100.
Oh, fantastic. Okay. Let's go back to your Spartathlon thing. So, was there any point during that run when you thought I should give up or I cannot continue? And what were you consuming all the during the 246 kilometer run?
So giving up at that time was not an option. I had committed to myself to doing this full time, and I was just very new to doing this full time. I think it was the same year. Or no, I was just sorry, it was just before I had sort of one second. I had actually committed to doing this full time already, right? And it had just been a year since I'd been running as a full time athlete. So, one, I had the pressure of performing. Could not make mistakes and could not drop out because I'm a full time athlete and I was trying to make a career of this. And my work is the races I do, so I could not fail at it. Second, I'd also committed and put in a lot of money from support from people. And it was not easy getting to La Ultra because I could not fund it. So, and third was the training. Because it was such a long distance, I had been running for a lot in the build up and I'd done a lot of training in the build up. So when I was during Spartathlon, when I had these little injuries or whenever I found it hard, so in the race has this thing called the death bus. It's basically this bus that runs behind all the runners. It goes behind all the runners, and as you reach the checkpoint, if you haven't made the cutoff, you need to stop your race and get into the bus. So they call it the death bus. So I had told myself the only way you are not finishing this race is if the death bus catches up with you. So either you get to the finish line or the death bus catches up with you.
33 hours on foot. Did you ever hallucinate during this run?
I did. So I can't remember exactly what time it was, but I think it was around 23 hours, 22 hours around that time. And I remember, running on a dark street. You're running through all the streets are, going through all these villages and it's backcountry streets. It's not the highways. So I remember running through this dark street and dozing off and, feeling very sleepy. I got to an aid station and I just sat down for, I think, 10, 15 minutes and took a power nap. And after that, I got up and I was fresh again. And then I kept running.
And what were you consuming during this run? Your liquids, your diet, what was it during the run?
So the race allows you, luckily the race has many aid stations. There are, I think, 74 aid stations. And they're all spread out anywhere between 3 to 5 kilometers range. The aid stations also double up as checkpoints. So all the aid stations have a timing cutoff. You have to meet those. So, and you can also drop a bag anywhere at any aid station you want. So I had left, if I'm not mistaken, drop bags every 40 kilometers. And I was carrying my gels, I was carrying my bars, so I had these powders. Unimed gels were still new at that time. So I was carrying those. And also there was this thing by an Ultra Butter by Unimed. And that also I think was very new at that time. So I was carrying these products on me. And when I would get to an aid station, I would consume the fruits and whatever was at the aid station. I remember Greek yogurt was what I discovered in Greece, and that was my favorite thing. I was looking forward to that at almost every other aid station.
Wow. And what are the typical challenges that you face in your ultra? See, ultra running is pretty much a very nascent sport in the country. How do you fund your expenses? Whether it is traveling abroad, your gear, your event participation expenses. Any challenges that you face on this front?
That is, it's part of the job as a full-time athlete, and like any other athlete, I fund it like almost any other professional athlete would. The main source of funding is working with brands and working with organizations and working with companies. That's my main source of sort of funding myself. So that requires a lot of work as well. Reaching out to companies and organizations is not easy, and I have to show value in the work I do and what value I add to an organization. That's the way I have been going about it. And over the years, initial years at least, I did have support from people. Whether it's my close family members, uncles and aunts, they did help me out very often. My own family, they did help me out very often. That's pretty much been the way I've been supporting myself. And living in Manali, it's not just a beautiful place; it also allows me to cut down on a lot of unnecessary expenses that the
Right.
city life brings. So, yeah,
So you've been largely self-coach, right?
yes.
So do you ever feel that you should have been under the training of a mentor or a coach or anything like
Yes.
that?
So I think a coach is important and plays a big role. For me, when I started out running, I did not know much and I could not afford a coach at that time. So a lot of the coaching, that's the reason why I ended up self-coaching myself. A lot of it would come out of reading and trial and error and learning about myself. So that is how that's the reason I sort of self-coached myself mostly. But I do think if I did have a coach early on itself, I would not have made a lot of many simple mistakes, a lot of unnecessary mistakes, and I could have progressed a lot faster.
Right. So there's a sudden spurt of a lot of these trail running events in the countries, in our country. I mean, so what do you think of the ultra running scene in India? A lot of people are taking up to ultra running and quitting or moving away from road races.
I have to say that I love it, right? This is
Right.
this is what I'm doing. So the more people get to do trail races, I think the better it is. It's I think a great experience because you get to run outside the cities. You get to run in a even though you're out in nature, it's still fairly controlled since it's a race, and you get to breathe fresh air. You're like I mentioned in the PBD, right? You're the
Right.
sights you see these beautiful views of nature. You hear the sounds of the birds and your own footsteps on the grass and things like that, right? So it's a very fulfilling experience, and the more people do it, I think the better it is. So I'm definitely glad to see a lot of trail races, coming up in the country, and that's why races like Marnad are important because it's a good introduction to the space of trail running. It allows you to it gradually eases you into the sport. So it's great, and I think it should grow. And the more it grows, the more people can enjoy this side of running as well.
Yeah. So talking about your nature and hearing the chirping of the birds, I've read about you spotting a leopard in your training run. Yeah.
so so no, I didn't spot. I spotted a bear in my training. Oh, sorry, I've spotted foxes and I've spotted
Right.
a lot of birds in my training runs. A leopard, I have been fortunate enough not to come across it yet. But
Hmm.
I have seen. So like there was 2 years back, there were leopards that were coming into the village that I live in, and the forest that I run around that's just behind my house has leopards. And winters, because it's snowing and very cold, a lot of the wildlife comes lower in the valley. So like I have a friend, his dog was actually attacked by a leopard, and people in the village that I live in, well, actually I think one person was attacked as well by a leopard. So I've been fortunate not to actually see a leopard in person in the wild, but I think I don't want to see a leopard in person in the wild. It's pretty scary. But I've come across a lot of bear pug marks and a lot of like times in the forest where I've been like, oh yeah, a bear was around here. Uh, but fox, monals, very frequent.
Wow. So I have a lot of questions from our audience for you. So maybe I'll just jump into those. Some of them are which I myself wanted to talk to you about. One comes from Shailendra. He's asking you, what's your pre-race ritual?
So uh, I like to get to the start line just in time. Because of that, I've also got into the start line actually a little too late sometimes. Like I think 5 to 10 minutes before the start of a race is long enough for me to be at a start line. So I'm usually in my room wherever I am till as late as possible. I like to lay out all my gear the night before, and just before I leave, I like to go have a shower, a nice warm shower. It calms me down. It allows me to be a little more peaceful, and I come out of the shower, get straight into my clothes, make sure I have packed everything, and uh, just walk out of my door. I don't like to listen to music. I just like to be quiet usually when I'm getting to the start line without too much talking. And once I'm at the start line, I don't mind talking to friends and be a little chatty. And then it allows me to build up that excitement from being a calm sort of guy before I get to the start line to being a little bit of excited and jumpy and tick to get into action. So that's how I sort of the last half an hour to 45 minutes is usually like that.
I have questions from Anthony and Dhanakumar. I'll club them into one. Anthony is asking, how does your typical training week look like? And the second part, this comes from Dhanakumar. Do you run with heart rate monitoring? Do you train by following HR? How important is the HR training while running on trails?
Yeah. So I don't actually. What's the first question?
First one was how does your typical training week look like?
Okay, so a lot of running. Usually I'm running twice a day, 6 days a week. So it's usually anywhere between 10 to 12 runs, depending on how much I'm running. I break most of my runs into double runs, and I do add a little bit of cycling, a little bit of strength training. So I finally, after all these years, have got myself a indoor cycle trainer to replace one of my runs in the day a couple of times a week with cycling. And I do a bit of strength training as well. And this time of the year, for December, this is usually my off season. My races will start only May onwards. So off season would be a fair amount of running, 120, 160 kilometer weeks at least, because this is also my base phase. In the base phase, the highest I go up to is like 200 kilometers in the mountains in Manali. A lot of it is very easy running though, and a lot of it is just sort of relaxed, not too much hard interval kind of training. That comes closer to the races in the build up, like 2-3 months before the races. I start doing that, and I sleep a lot.
Great.
Sleep plays a big role for me. I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's one thing that I cannot do without. I make sure I get a lot of sleep. Over the years, I used to train a lot with a heart rate monitor initially, but more over the years in Manali, I don't train with a heart rate monitor just because my heart rate goes up even if I'm walking up a mountain. So even if I'm going at a very easy walking pace, the heart rate goes up. So the most I use a heart rate in training in Manali is to make sure my easy runs are easy. So like my easy runs, let's say, need to be in zone 2. To make sure zone 2, I am in zone 2 throughout my runs, I'll use a heart rate monitor then. But generally, I don't end up using a heart rate monitor. I think when I'm in the plains, when I'm running more flat routes, then I would use a heart rate monitor just to make sure, it allows me to understand myself better and understand how the training is impacting my body and my recovery better. So if I'm in the plains, I would probably use the heart rate monitor more often.
What about injuries? This is something which I too wanted to ask. There's a question from one of our audience, John Ratnam. He's asking you, how do you run injury free? So is there any specific that you do to ward off injuries? So have you ever been injured which forced you for a long layoff from running and training?
So I have been injured twice. Once was when I sort of started doing ultras early on, and I was doing a lot of stupid things and a lot of stupid unnecessary running, basically. And that I sort of had a bit of an ITB issue, but not something too extreme. I remember running from Mumbai to Surat one year, and I didn't end up finishing that because of the ITB. And once probably I was put out for like a week, 10 days because of the same ITB. But other than that, last year I sort of injured my right knee, but not from running. That was from a rock climb I was doing, and I fell off the rock and fell funny on my leg and ended up hurting my knee. So other than these two injuries, I've not really been injured. I've not had running related injuries other than the ITB thing, mainly because I like to be a little cautious. I don't like to do too much. Even if I'm running 200-kilometer weeks, it's only because I know how much I can take. It's because I know how much of running I can actually do. I don't go from running, like, for example, right now in my base phase, I wouldn't do a 200-kilometer week right now because my base phase sort of started only in November. So I will do a 200-kilometer week only in Feb, right? And from November, December, Jan, these 3 months, even in base phase, is a build up to those 200 kilometers. Where I started my base phase after like a couple of weeks of a rest and a break from running. I did run, but not too much, but it was essentially a break. So uh, I started with like a 60K the first week and an 80K and building up very gradually. The reason I take my time and build up gradually is because I don't want to get injured. I want to ease my body into doing a lot of things. And that's the one reason why I don't do too much races as well. It allows me to plan my year better and do few races, but do them properly and do them without getting injured.
Okay. Sundar is asking, does high altitude training need any specific skills more than the road running? Does one need to also possess trekking skills as well to run there?
Definitely. I think that's one of the fun things about trail running. You need to be a good trekker. You need to be hike. You need to be able to hike very well, up a mountain, down a mountain. So hiking is plays a big role because when you're running a lot of these races, you cannot keep going up a mountain while running as well. It gets too steep at times or too technical at times, too rocky. So you need to be able to hike well. If you want to go up the mountain fast, you need to have a lot of power. You need to have a lot of strength. Similar to, if you see cyclists who specialize in just climbing, they have a lot of strength and power. It's the same thing. You need to have a lot of that. If you're running downhill, you need to have the skill of being able to coordinate. Your balance needs to be good. You need to have good hand-eye coordination so that you can run down a mountain fast. And these are skills you need to work on and develop with time. And because a trail race is never flat, you're always going up and down and up and down. You need to be able to change and shift gears, from hiking up a mountain to immediately running down, to immediately running faster on a flat. So you need to develop your muscles in different ways so that you can execute your trail races properly. And of course, even eating, you should be able to know when to eat and when not to eat during a trail race. For example, if you drink too much water and you're running downhill, you're going to probably throw it all up.
Right. Now there's Nasir who is asking you, this probably will be a second last question to you. While training at low altitudes, do you suggest any low altitude training to simulate high altitude training, like altitude masks or something like that?
So, if you want to simulate, firstly, you need to understand why do you want to simulate the high altitude training? What purpose is it serving? Is it good enough and important enough for your training? If you think it is, if you answer that question, then you figure out how to simulate it. The ways people do it, like, if you see Mo Farah, he simulates and he has this thing he uses, which is a high altitude tent. Basically, you put your head in it, you sleep in it, and it allows you to feel like you're sleeping at 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 meters, which allows you to then develop more red blood cells and eventually, run faster and better. So there are benefits to it, and you can use things like the tents. Also, you can use these masks that come on your runs. Of course, it depends what kind of mask you're using, not just any mask. Because a lot of the masks that we just get randomly now because of corona it also ends up allowing you to, you end up breathing in a lot of the carbon dioxide you're exhaling. So not those kind of masks. You get specific type of masks that you can use to control how much sort of air you're breathing and oxygen you're breathing to simulate again running at high altitude.
Okay, so we have one last question. I would like to keep it last. This is from Sujai is asking you, any plan to run the Western States or the Barclay?
Yes, Barclay for not anytime soon. Western States is right up there on the list. I think I have actually been applying. I've applied only once for Western States last year, but for 2021, my main goal is UTMB, the main 170 kilometer version. But yes, Western States is definitely right up there on the list, and I hope to tick it off and do it in the next few years. But the one of my big goals with Western States is not to just go and run it. I want to go and race it, and that's why I'm taking my time with sort of getting to Western States.
Fantastic. So that's it, Kairan. So we have many questions, which I'm sure maybe we'll get answers from you in the coming days, or maybe on any other forum. It's been great talking to you, and all the best. Good luck for all your future goals. A very happy new year, and I hope 2021 brings back the smiles on all our faces. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'll hand it over now to Aru for the vote of thanks. Or Aru, over to you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sam Uncle, for facilitating today's webinar. And Kyron, it was mesmerizing listening to you speak when you talked about how you chose to move away from the clutter of the city life and pursue your passions for ultra running in the mountains. How you faced your challenges head on and overcame your mental and physical limitations to achieve what very few could have achieved. Thank you for sharing your experience with us on your various unique runs, especially the Friendship Peak run during the lockdown times. It was a pleasure having you today, and thanks a lot for your time even during this Christmas season. Our deepest gratitude for taking the time out and sharing your experiences and learning with us today. And to our audience, thank you for spending time with us today. The recording of this event will be available on our Hyderabad Runners Facebook as well as the Airtel Hyderabad Marathon YouTube page. Please come back to watch again and share it on your social media profiles and to others who can benefit. Hashtag Hyderabad Runners, hashtag Beyond the Track. We'll be back next Saturday in 2021 at the same time with a very unique conversation between three of our very own Hyderabad runners. Until then, this is Arubish from Hyderabad Runners signing off. Wishing you in advance a very happy new year. Stay safe and stay healthy. Bye.